A ceasefire was signed. Guns fell silent. The world exhaled. But something wasn't right. Because in the Middle East, a pause in war is never just a pause. It's a countdown. Welcome back. Today, we're going deep inside one of the most volatile and misunderstood conflicts on the planet, the Israel-Lebanon ceasefire that was supposed to end the fighting, but may be holding together by a thread. In the next 12 to 15 minutes, you'll understand exactly how this ceasefire was born, what forces are threatening to tear it apart, and why the entire world should be watching this border very, very carefully. If you're new here, welcome. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Because in a world where war can restart in a single night, you need a channel that explains what's actually happening. Let's get into it. To understand the ceasefire, you need to understand the war that came before it. When Hamas launched its devastating attack on Israel on October 7, 2023, the violence didn't stay contained to Gaza. Within days, a second front opened. Hezbollah, the powerful, Iranian-backed militant group based in southern Lebanon, began launching rockets, anti-tank missiles, and drones across the northern Israeli border. Night after night. Week after week. And Israel responded. Airstrikes on Lebanese villages. Artillery exchanges across the border. Entire communities on both sides were evacuated. Over 60,000 Israelis were displaced from their homes in the north. In Lebanon, the toll was even heavier, hundreds of thousands of civilians forced to flee. This wasn't a skirmish. This wasn't a minor flare-up. This was the most serious conflict on the Israel-Lebanon border in nearly 2 decades, since the brutal 34-day war of 2006. And then, in late 2024, something happened that almost no one predicted. The guns went quiet. But here's what no one is telling you: the reasons that silence happened are just as dangerous as the war itself. The ceasefire wasn't born from peace. It was born from exhaustion, pressure, and a very calculated set of interests, none of which were entirely aligned. Here's the backstory. By the fall of 2024, Israel's military campaign in Lebanon had escalated dramatically. The Israeli Defense Forces targeted Hezbollah's leadership with a series of devastating precision strikes. In September 2024, Hezbollah's longtime Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah, a figure who had led the organization for over 30 years, was killed in an Israeli airstrike on Beirut's southern suburbs. It was a seismic moment. Hezbollah was shaken. Its command structure was disrupted. But it was not destroyed. At the same time, diplomatic pressure was mounting. The United States, France, and other international partners pushed hard for a halt in fighting. Lebanon's economy was in freefall. Israel's northern communities were still unable to return home. And the risk of the conflict pulling in Iran directly was terrifying the entire international community. A deal was hammered out. The terms: a 60-day ceasefire, brokered significantly by the United States and France. Under the agreement, Israeli forces would gradually withdraw from southern Lebanon. The Lebanese Armed Forces, Lebanon's national military, would deploy to the south to fill the vacuum. And Hezbollah would be expected to pull back north of the Litani River, in accordance with UN Security Council Resolution 1701. On paper, it sounded like progress. But the devil, as always, was in the details. Here's where it gets complicated. And here's what the headlines keep missing. The ceasefire rests on several critical assumptions, and nearly every single one of them is contested. Assumption number 1, Hezbollah would actually comply. Hezbollah never formally signed the ceasefire agreement. Lebanon's government, which has historically been unable to exert full control over Hezbollah, is the party technically bound by the deal. Hezbollah operates as a state within a state. It has its own military, its own intelligence apparatus, and its own foreign policy, largely guided by Tehran. Independent observers on the ground have documented ongoing violations, weapons movements, repositioning of fighters, reconstruction of military infrastructure in southern Lebanon. Israel has continued conducting airstrikes, saying it is targeting ceasefire violations. Is that true? Is Israel being too aggressive? Or is it acting on legitimate intelligence? The answer depends entirely on who you ask. Assumption number 2, the Lebanese army could fill the vacuum. The Lebanese armed forces are underfunded, under-equipped, and deeply divided. They face an almost impossible mandate: deploy to a region where Hezbollah has deep roots and community ties, disarm a group that most of their own soldiers may quietly sympathize with, and do it without triggering a new civil conflict inside Lebanon. This isn't theoretical. Lebanon has a painful history of internal sectarian violence. Any military operation against Hezbollah by the Lebanese army risks ripping the country apart from the inside. Assumption number 3, Israel would complete its withdrawal on schedule. As of early 2025, Israeli forces remained in parts of southern Lebanon beyond the agreed timeline. Israel cited ongoing security threats. Critics, including Lebanon and international observers, called it a violation of the deal. This creates a dangerous dynamic. Each side can point to the other's violations as justification for their own actions. And that is exactly how ceasefires collapse. Now let's talk about something the mainstream coverage often glosses over. This isn't just a conflict between Israel and Hezbollah. There are multiple powerful actors operating in the shadows, each with their own agenda, each pulling strings. Iran. Iran created Hezbollah in the early 1980s. It funds it, arms it, and strategically guides it. For Tehran, Hezbollah is its most powerful proxy, its so-called forward deterrence against Israel. Iran does not want to see Hezbollah dismantled. But Iran also doesn't want a war that draws it into direct confrontation with Israel and the United States while it's managing its own internal pressures and nuclear negotiations. Iran's game is delicate. Keep Hezbollah intact. Keep pressure on Israel. But don't let it escalate to a point of no return. The United States. America brokered the ceasefire. That means Washington has enormous political capital invested in making it stick. But the US is also Israel's most important ally, providing billions in military aid and diplomatic cover. Balancing pressure on Israel to withdraw while supporting its security needs is a diplomatic tightrope that Washington has struggled with for decades. France. France has a unique historical relationship with Lebanon, stemming from its colonial past. Paris sees itself as a guardian of Lebanese sovereignty. France pushed hard for the ceasefire and has tried to maintain international pressure for its implementation. And then there's Syria. Often forgotten in this equation, Syria's territory has been used as a transit corridor for Iranian weapons flowing to Hezbollah. Any lasting solution on the Israel-Lebanon border must eventually grapple with what's happening in Syria, a country still ravaged by years of civil war and fragmented authority. When you look at all these players together, you begin to see why the ceasefire is so fragile. Because every actor is playing a longer game. Let's talk about the tripwires. Because one of the most dangerous aspects of a fragile ceasefire is that it doesn't take a full military offensive to shatter it. It takes a single incident. A rogue missile. A miscalculated airstrike. A soldier in the wrong place. A funeral that turns into a protest that turns into a firefight. History is full of these moments. In 2006, the conflict that led to the last major Israel-Lebanon war was triggered by a cross-border raid and the capture of 2 Israeli soldiers. What followed was 34 days of war, over 1,000 Lebanese civilians killed, and billions of dollars in destruction. Today, the region is sitting on a powder keg of accumulated grievances, displaced populations, and armed factions that operate outside full governmental control. Israeli airstrikes in Lebanon have continued even during the ceasefire period, with Israel saying they are targeting Hezbollah infrastructure and weapons caches. Hezbollah, for its part, has made clear that it considers itself undefeated. Its leadership has vowed to rebuild. Its fighters remain in the south, embedded within civilian communities. And here is perhaps the most chilling fact of all: both sides believe they won the last round. When two sides both claim victory from the same conflict, that is when the seeds of the next war are planted. So where does this go? Let me give you 3 scenarios. Think of them as a spectrum, from cautious optimism to catastrophe. Scenario 1, the ceasefire holds, barely. The Lebanese army slowly expands its presence in the south. Hezbollah pulls back incrementally, not because it wants to, but because its losses have been severe and it needs time to rebuild. Israel completes its withdrawal under international pressure. Violations continue on both sides, but no single incident is large enough to trigger full-scale war. The ceasefire becomes permanent by default, not because of trust, but because neither side is ready for another round. This is the best-case scenario. And it's fragile. Scenario 2, gradual escalation. Violations mount. Israel conducts increasingly deep strikes inside Lebanon. Hezbollah retaliates with rocket fire. The Lebanese government is unable to stop it. International monitors issue statements. Nothing changes. Both sides inch closer to the threshold, and one incident, one tactical miscalculation, tips them over. This is the most likely scenario, based on current trends. Scenario 3, full-scale war returns. A major incident, assassination, mass casualty attack, or a strategic strike that crosses a defined red line, triggers a full military response. Israel launches a comprehensive campaign into Lebanon. Hezbollah fires thousands of rockets deep into Israeli territory. Iran activates other proxies across the region. The conflict spreads beyond 2 borders. This is the scenario that keeps military strategists and diplomats awake at night. No one wants it. But history has shown, again and again, that what no one wants can still happen. Here's what we know for certain. The Israel-Lebanon ceasefire was a necessary pause in a brutal conflict. It saved lives in the short term. It gave diplomacy a chance. But a ceasefire is not peace. Peace requires political settlements, withdrawal from occupied positions, disarmament of non-state actors, and, perhaps most importantly, trust. None of those conditions currently exist along the Israel-Lebanon border. The people of Lebanon, who have lived through multiple wars, a devastating economic collapse, and the catastrophic 2020 Beirut port explosion, deserve better than another cycle of destruction. The communities of northern Israel, who spent over a year unable to return to their homes, deserve security that doesn't depend on the fragile goodwill of armed factions. And the wider world deserves honest, clear-eyed reporting on what is actually happening, not just headlines, but context, history, and the uncomfortable truths that powerful interests often prefer you not to understand. That's what this channel is here for. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think this ceasefire can hold? Or is another war in Lebanon inevitable? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. This is a conversation worth having. If this video gave you a clearer picture of what's happening, share it with someone who needs to understand this conflict. Hit that like button. It helps more people find this content. And if you want to go even deeper, our next video covers the full history of Hezbollah, from its creation in 1982 to becoming one of the most powerful non-state military forces on Earth. Trust me, you don't want to miss that one. Subscribe, and we'll see you there.